The morning started like any other for Laura Dawson. She woke up early, brewed herself a cup of coffee, and got ready for another long day at work. Life wasn't easy for her, but she had learned to push through. At 24 years old, she was already carrying more weight than most people twice her age. Between paying rent, covering her younger brother's school fees, and keeping food on the table, every day felt like a battle. Still, she tried to stay positive. After all, life could always be worse, or so she told herself. Laura worked at a small diner tucked away in the heart of downtown Chicago. It wasn't fancy or particularly clean, but it served decent food at reasonable prices, attracting everyone from office workers grabbing lunch to tourists exploring the city. Most days, Laura enjoyed chatting with regulars, hearing their stories, and sharing a laugh or two. But today would turn out differently. It began when a man walked into the diner around noon. He wore an expensive-looking suit and carried himself with an air of confidence that stood out among the usual crowd. He took a seat by the window, ordering a steak sandwich and a black coffee. Laura approached him with her notepad, smiling politely as she jotted down his request. Everything seemed normal until he snapped at her for taking too long to bring his drink. "I've been waiting 5 minutes," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Is this how you treat your customers?" Laura froze, unsure of what to say. She hadn't realized he was in such a hurry. He hadn't mentioned anything earlier. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "Let me check on your order right away." But the man wasn't satisfied. He continued complaining, raising his voice with each passing second. Other patrons turned to look, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in disapproval. By the time Laura returned with his coffee, the situation had spiraled out of control. The man demanded to speak to the manager, claiming Laura's behavior was unacceptable. When the manager arrived, a middle-aged man named Greg who hated conflict, things only got worse. Instead of calming the customer down, Greg immediately sided with him. Without even asking Laura for her side of the story, he launched into a tirade about professionalism and customer service. "You're done here," Greg announced, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Pack your things and leave." Laura's cheeks burned with shame as she stood frozen behind the counter. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything she'd been through. She glanced around, hoping someone might step in to defend her, but no one did. Some avoided eye contact altogether, while others watched with expressions ranging from pity to judgment. With trembling hands, Laura gathered her apron and purse, trying to hold back tears. As she walked toward the exit, she noticed a figure sitting near the window, a man who hadn't joined in the commotion. He looked different from the rest of the crowd. His suit was tailored perfectly, and his posture suggested authority. Yet there was something softer in his gaze, almost like curiosity. For a brief moment their eyes met, and Laura felt a strange sense of recognition, though she couldn't explain why. Once outside, Laura leaned against the brick wall of the diner, letting out a shaky breath. The cool breeze did little to calm her racing thoughts. How was she supposed to pay rent now? What about her brother's tuition? Panic crept in, threatening to overwhelm her. Just as she was about to pull herself together, the door opened behind her. "Excuse me?" a deep voice called out. Laura turned to see the man from the window standing there. Up close, she noticed details she hadn't before. His piercing blue eyes, the faint stubble on his jawline, and the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. There was something magnetic about him, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. "Yes?" she asked hesitantly, clutching her bag tighter. He gestured toward her neck. "That necklace you're wearing, where did you get it?" Laura instinctively touched the pendant hanging around her neck. It was an odd piece of jewelry, shaped like a crescent moon with tiny symbols etched into its surface. Her grandmother had given it to her years ago, saying it was part of their family's legacy. Laura never paid much attention to the story. It
sounded like folklore, but she cherished the necklace nonetheless. "It belonged to my grandmother," she replied cautiously.
"Why do you ask?" The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, he pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. It was an image of an artifact that looked eerily similar to her necklace, except larger and more elaborate. Laura's eyes widened in surprise. "What is this?" she asked, pointing at the screen. "That," he said slowly, "is something I've spent years searching for. And if I'm not mistaken, you might have just solved a mystery I thought was unsolvable." Laura blinked, unsure whether to laugh or run. Was this guy serious, or was he just messing with her because of what happened inside? Before she could decide, he extended a hand. "My name is Ethan Cole. I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee, if you're willing to talk more." Laura hesitated. Something about Ethan felt off yet intriguing. Maybe it was the intensity in his voice or the sincerity in his eyes. Whatever it was, she found herself nodding reluctantly. "All right," she said. "But I'm not promising anything." Ethan smiled faintly, leading her to a cafe across the street. As they sat down, he ordered 2 coffees and leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "So," he began, lowering his voice, "tell me everything you know about that necklace." Laura sighed, recounting the few details her grandmother had shared. According to family legend, the necklace was passed down through generations, originating from a distant ancestor who claimed to have received it from guardians. No one really believed the story. It sounded too fantastical. But Laura admitted she always felt drawn to the necklace, as if it held some kind of power. Ethan listened intently, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he paused, choosing his words carefully. "What I'm about to tell you may sound unbelievable," he said. "But based on what I've seen, I think your necklace is connected to something extraordinary." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Ethan hesitated, then explained how he'd encountered similar artifacts during a research expedition years ago. These objects weren't ordinary. They contained traces of materials unknown to science and bore symbols linked to ancient civilizations. If Laura's necklace was genuine, it could unlock knowledge far beyond human comprehension. As he spoke, Laura's skepticism wavered. There was something compelling about Ethan's conviction, something that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, her grandmother's stories weren't entirely fictional after all. By the time they parted ways, Laura's mind was spinning with questions. Who was Ethan Cole? What exactly was her necklace capable of? And why did she feel like her life was about to change forever? Little did she know, the answers would come sooner and costlier than she ever imagined. After leaving the cafe, Laura couldn't stop thinking about what Ethan had told her. His words lingered in her mind like a puzzle she desperately wanted to solve. She replayed their conversation over and over again, trying to make sense of it all. Was he serious when he said her necklace was connected to something extraordinary? Or was this some elaborate trick? Despite her doubts, there was something about Ethan that felt trustworthy. His calm demeanor, his genuine curiosity, and the way he seemed genuinely surprised by her necklace. The next morning, Laura woke up feeling restless. She stared at the necklace lying on her bedside table, its crescent shape catching the sunlight streaming through her window. For years, she'd worn it without giving it much thought, treating it as nothing more than a family heirloom. But now, thanks to Ethan, she couldn't help but wonder if it held secrets far greater than she'd ever imagined. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Ethan. "If you're free today, I'd like to show you something. No pressure, just think about it." Attached was an address, a sleek building downtown labeled as Cole Technologies. Laura hesitated. Part of her wanted to ignore the message and go back to her normal life, or at least what was left of it after losing her job. But another part of her couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. What harm could it do to see what Ethan wanted to show her? At worst, she'd waste an hour or two. At best, well, she didn't even know what best looked like anymore. By noon, Laura found herself standing outside Cole Technologies, a towering skyscraper made of glass and steel. She double-checked the address Ethan had sent before stepping inside. The lobby was modern and luxurious, with marble floors, plush seating areas, and a reception desk manned by a sharply dressed woman. Laura approached nervously, clutching her bag tightly. "I'm here to see Ethan Cole," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. The receptionist glanced up, then nodded after checking her screen. "Mr. Cole is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the top floor." As the elevator doors closed behind her, Laura felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had no idea what awaited her upstairs, but one thing was certain. Ethan wasn't just some random guy who happened to notice her necklace. He was someone important, someone powerful, and yet he'd gone out of his way to talk to her. When the elevator opened, Ethan was waiting for her. He greeted her with a warm smile and gestured for her to follow him down a hallway, lined with offices and laboratories. Through the windows, Laura caught glimpses of people working on advanced machines and computers. Everything about the place screamed cutting-edge technology. "This way," Ethan said, leading her into a large room filled with equipment. In the center stood a scanning device that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Laura's eyes widened as she took it all. "And what is this?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. "This is where we analyze artifacts," Ethan explained. "I want to scan your necklace, if you're okay with that." Laura hesitated. Handing over the necklace felt like giving away a piece of herself. It had been with her for so long, a constant reminder of her grandmother and the stories she used to tell. But if Ethan was right, if the necklace really did hold answers, it might be worth taking the risk. "Okay," she said finally, unclasping the chain and handing it to him. "But be careful with it." Ethan nodded, placing the necklace carefully onto the scanner. As the machine hummed to life, beams of light began moving over the surface of the pendant. Laura watched intently, her heart racing with anticipation. After a few minutes, the screen displayed a series of images and data points that meant little to her, but clearly fascinated Ethan. "This is incredible," he murmured, scrolling through the results. "The symbols match exactly with those on the artifact I showed you yesterday, and these materials, they're not from Earth." Laura blinked, unsure she'd heard him correctly. "What do you mean, not from Earth?" Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious. "I mean exactly what I said. These materials don't exist naturally on our planet. Someone or something brought them here." For a moment, Laura struggled to process what he was saying. Aliens? Ancient civilizations? None of it sounded real. Yet the evidence was right, in front of her, glowing softly on the screen. Slowly, pieces of her grandmother's stories began falling into place. The guardians she always talked about, the ones who supposedly gave her the necklace, they hadn't been figments of her imagination after all. "So, what does this mean?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It means we're dealing with something far bigger than either of us realized. According to my research, these artifacts are keys to unlocking knowledge that could change humanity forever. Imagine sustainable energy sources, cures for diseases, even interstellar travel. All of it could be within reach." "But why me?" Laura interrupted. "Why would my family have something like this?" "That's the question we need to answer," Ethan replied. "And I think your grandmother knew more than she let on. Did she ever mention anything specific about the Guardians? Any details? About where they came from or what they wanted?" Laura shook her head. "Just that they were protectors. She said it was our duty to keep the necklace safe." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe it's time we figured out why. Because whoever left these artifacts behind didn't do it by accident. They had a purpose, and I think your necklace is key to understanding it." As the day wore on, Laura and Ethan continued talking, piecing together fragments of information. Ethan shared stories of his own journey, how he'd stumbled upon similar artifacts during an expedition years ago, and how he'd dedicated his life to uncovering their secrets. Laura listened intently, amazed by how much he knew and how passionate he was about his work. Despite everything, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that danger loomed somewhere in the shadows. If Ethan was right, if the necklace truly held such Immense power. Then others would surely want it too. People far less noble than Ethan. The thought sent a chill down her spine. By the time they finished for the day, Laura's head was spinning. She thanked Ethan for explaining everything and promised to think things over. As she stepped back into the elevator, she glanced down at the necklace now safely tucked around her neck once more. It felt heavier somehow, as though it carried the weight of the world on its delicate chain. On the ride home, Laura stared out the window, lost in thought. Her life had taken a sharp turn in just 24 hours, and she wasn't sure where it was headed next. One thing was clear, though. She couldn't go back to the way things were before. Whether she liked it or not, she was part of something, much bigger now. That night, as she lay in bed, Laura made a decision. Whatever mysteries surrounded the necklace, whatever secrets it held, she would uncover them. Not just for herself, but for her family, for everyone who had trusted her to protect it. And if that meant teaming up with Ethan Cole, then so be. Yet little did she know, the challenges ahead would test her courage, her loyalty, and her very understanding of reality. But for now, all she could do was wait and prepare for the adventure of a lifetime. Over the next few days, Laura found herself spending more time at Cole Technologies than she ever imagined possible. Each visit brought new discoveries and new questions. Ethan was relentless in his pursuit of answers, poring over data and running countless tests on the necklace. Laura admired his dedication but couldn't help feeling overwhelmed. Everything was moving so fast and she wasn't sure she could keep up. One afternoon, as they sat together in the lab, Ethan finally spoke about something that had been weighing heavily on his mind. "Laura," he began, his tone unusually serious, "we're not the only ones interested in these artifacts." She looked up from the notebook she'd been doodling in. "What do you mean?" "There's a group, let's call them collectors, who have been tracking down similar items for years. They believe these artifacts hold untold power, and they'll stop at nothing to get their hands on them." Laura frowned. "You think they know about my necklace?" "It's possible," Ethan admitted. "If they don't already, they will soon. News like this doesn't stay hidden for long." The thought sent a chill down Laura's spine. Until now, she'd assumed their little project was safe, tucked away inside Ethan's secure building. But if others were searching for the same thing, how long would it be before they came knocking? "Why haven't you told me this before?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "I didn't want to scare you," Ethan replied honestly, "but we can't ignore the risks anymore. If someone finds out what you have, they won't hesitate to take it, even if it means hurting you." Laura swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. "So what do we do?" "For starters," Ethan said, pulling up a map on one of the screens, "we need to figure out where the rest of these artifacts might be. Your necklace is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Finding the others could give us a clearer picture of what we're dealing with." He pointed to several locations marked on the map. "These are sites where similar objects have been discovered. Most of them are ruins or burial grounds linked to ancient civilizations. If we can trace their origins, we might find clues about who left them behind." Laura studied the map, her eyes narrowing as she spotted something familiar. One of the markers was near a small town in New Mexico, a place her grandmother used to talk about often. "Wait," she said suddenly. "My grandmother mentioned a place like this. She called it the Valley of Echoes. She always said it was important, but I never understood why." Ethan leaned closer, intrigued. "Do you remember anything else? Any details about what she said?" Laura closed her eyes, trying to recall the fragments of stories her grandmother had shared. She talked about guardians watching over the valley. And there was something about a door, a hidden entrance buried beneath the earth. Ethan's expression shifted, his curiosity turning into excitement. That could be exactly what we're looking for. A doorway to wherever these artifacts came from. For the first time since this whole journey began, Laura felt a spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't just a random person caught up in something bigger than herself. Maybe her family's history was connected to all of this in ways she hadn't realized. But even as the pieces started coming together, danger lurked closer than either of them anticipated. That evening, as Laura walked home from the subway station, She noticed a black car parked across the street. At first, she dismissed it as coincidence, but when it followed her around the block, her heart sank. Someone was watching her. Panicked, she ducked into a nearby convenience store and called Ethan. "I think I'm being followed," she whispered, keeping her voice low. "There's a car outside and it's been trailing me for blocks." Ethan didn't waste a second. "Stay put. I'm sending someone to pick you up." Within minutes, a sleek SUV pulled up outside the store. The driver, a quiet man named Marcus, who worked security for Ethan, ushered Laura inside and sped off before the black car could react. As they drove, Laura stared out the window, her mind racing. Who were these people? How had they found her so quickly? Back at Cole Technologies, Ethan greeted her with a grim expression. "This changes things," he said. "You're not safe here anymore." "What do you mean?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. "I mean you need to disappear for your own protection. These people won't stop until they have what they want." Laura shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "Disappear? From my life? My brother? I can't just leave everything behind?" "I'm not asking you to abandon your family," Ethan assured her. "But staying in your apartment isn't an option, not right now. You can stay with me, at least until we figure out our next move." Though hesitant, Laura knew he was right. Reluctantly, she agreed to pack a few essentials and move into Ethan's penthouse apartment downtown. It wasn't ideal, but it beat, risking her life every time she stepped outside. Over the following days, Laura adjusted to her temporary living situation. Ethan's apartment was luxurious yet minimalistic, filled with books, gadgets, and stunning views of the city skyline. Despite the opulence, it felt lonely, like a fortress designed to keep the world at bay. Laura couldn't imagine spending months, let alone years, cooped up in such isolation. Still, she tried to make the best of it. During the day, she helped Ethan sift through research and brainstorm ideas. At night, they discussed strategies for protecting the necklace while uncovering its secrets. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, built on mutual trust and shared determination. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Ethan broke the silence. "Laura, I need to ask you something. If it came down to it, if someone forced us to choose between destroying the necklace or letting it fall into the wrong hands, which would you pick?" Laura hesitated, the weight of the question sinking in. Destroying the necklace would mean losing a part of her family's legacy forever, but letting it fall into dangerous hands could have catastrophic consequences. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "It feels like choosing between two bad options." "That's because it is," Ethan said with a sigh. "And that's why we need to stay one step ahead. No matter what happens, we can't let them win." As the sun set over the horizon, casting golden light across the city, Laura made a silent promise to herself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't back down. Her grandmother had entrusted her with the necklace for a reason, and she intended to honor that trust, even if it meant facing unimaginable odds. Little did she know, the hardest decisions were still to come. Life in Ethan's penthouse was far from ordinary. For Laura, every moment felt like walking a tightrope between safety and danger. During the day, they worked tirelessly to decode more information about the necklace, piecing together fragments of ancient languages and mapping potential locations tied to the artifacts. At night, however, paranoia crept in. Shadows seemed darker, noises sharper. Every knock on the door or unfamiliar voice in the hallway sent shivers down Laura's spine. Ethan did everything he could to reassure her. He hired extra security, installed additional cameras around the building, and even taught Laura basic self-defense moves. Still, no amount of preparation could fully erase the feeling that they were being hunted. The black car Laura had spotted earlier hadn't returned, but she couldn't shake the sense that unseen eyes were watching their every move. One evening, while reviewing scans of the necklace, Ethan suddenly froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he stared at the screen. "Laura," he said slowly, his voice heavy with unease. "We've got a problem." She turned to him, immediately alert. "What is it?" "There's been a breach," he explained, turning the monitor toward her. On the screen was a list of files detailing their research on the necklace. Someone had accessed them remotely, bypassing multiple layers of encryption. How is that possible? Laura asked, panic rising in her chest. Your system is supposed to be secure, isn't it? It was secure, Ethan corrected grimly. But whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for. This wasn't random hacking, it was targeted. The realization hit Laura like a punch to the gut. They weren't just being followed. They'd been infiltrated. Whoever wanted the necklace wasn't playing games anymore. They were closing, and before they could discuss further, an alarm blared through the apartment. Red lights flashed along the walls as Ethan rushed to check the security feed. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 masked figures entering the building, heading straight for the penthouse. We need to go, now. Ethan grabbed a small bag containing essential supplies and tossed Laura a jacket. She fumbled to put it on, her hands trembling as adrenaline surged through her veins. They slipped out through a hidden service exit, avoiding the elevators and taking the stairs instead. The sound of footsteps echoing behind them spurred them onward. By the time they reached the ground floor, Laura's legs burned with exertion, but she pushed herself to keep moving. Outside, Ethan flagged down a waiting car driven by Marcus, the same quiet man who had rescued Laura days earlier. As they sped away, Laura glanced back at the building disappearing into the distance. It struck her then how much she'd already lost. Not just her job or her home, but any semblance of normalcy. Yet deep down, she knew running wasn't enough. Sooner or later, they'd have to face whoever was after them head-on. Over the next few days, Ethan and Laura laid low in safe houses scattered across the city. Each location was equipped with state-of-the-art security measures, yet none felt truly safe. Tensions ran high as they debated their next move. Should they try to confront their pursuers, or focus on decoding the necklace before it fell into the wrong hands? It was during one of these heated discussions that betrayal struck closer than expected. Ryan, Ethan's trusted assistant, a man Laura barely noticed despite his constant presence, walked into the safe house unannounced. His face was pale, his movements stiff with guilt. "Ryan?" Ethan said sharply. "What are you doing here?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed. "I didn't want it to come to this, Ethan. But I had no choice." "What are you talking about?" Laura demanded, stepping back instinctively. Ryan pulled out a device resembling a tablet and tapped a few commands. Instantly, alarms sounded outside, signaling the arrival of armed men. Laura's heart sank as she realized the truth. Ryan had sold them out. "You told me humanity wasn't ready for something like this," Ryan said, his voice trembling. "But someone has to make the hard decisions. If corporations control the technology, maybe they can use it responsibly. Maybe they can save us from ourselves." Ethan clenched his fists, fury flashing in his eyes. "You don't understand what you've done. These people aren't interested in saving anyone, they're interested in power." Ryan shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but it's too late." With those words, Ryan stepped aside, revealing a group of mercenaries. Storming into the room, guns drawn, they advanced toward Ethan and Laura, cutting off any chance of escape. Cornered, Ethan glanced at Laura, silently conveying a single message: "Trust me." In a split-second decision, Ethan lunged forward, tackling one of the guards and causing chaos in the cramped space. Seizing the opportunity, Laura bolted for the back door, clutching the necklace tightly. Shots rang out behind her, but she didn't look back. Her only thought was survival. Outside, the cold night air stung her lungs as she sprinted through narrow alleys, dodging trash bins and stray cats. Her mind raced with questions. Where should she go? Who could she trust? Just when she thought she might collapse from exhaustion, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Laura!" Ethan called softly, motioning for her to follow him into a nearby garage. Once inside, he slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it to catch his breath. "I thought I'd lost you," Laura gasped, tears streaming down her face. "No chance," Ethan replied, forcing a weak smile. Then, without hesitation, he pressed a small device into her hand. It looked like a USB drive but hummed faintly with energy. "What's this?" she asked, examining it closely. It's a prototype decoder, Ethan explained. If anything happens to me, use it to unlock the full potential of the necklace. It's our only hope. Laura shook her head vehemently. No. We stick together, remember? You promised. Ethan placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Listen to me. You're stronger than you think. Smarter too. Trust your instincts, and you'll find a way. Before she could argue further, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the garage. Ethan gave her one last meaningful look, then shoved her toward a side exit. Go. Now. Reluctantly, Laura obeyed, slipping into the darkness just as the mercenaries burst in. As she fled, she heard Ethan shout something defiant, though the words were drowned out by gunfire. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to keep moving, clutching both the necklace and the decoder tightly. Hours later, Laura found herself alone in a deserted subway station, huddled on a bench with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Ethan's sacrifice replayed in her mind over and over again, fueling her determination to see this through. She didn't know where to start or whom to turn to, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't let his bravery go to waste. Whatever secrets the necklace held, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them, not just for herself, but for everyone who had fought to protect its power. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting soft light onto the empty tracks, Laura stood up, her resolve hardened. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but she was ready. She had no other choice. The days following Ethan's sacrifice were a blur for Laura. Each morning she woke up exhausted, haunted by memories of his final moments. His voice echoed in her mind, urging her to trust herself, to keep going no matter what. But carrying that responsibility alone was overwhelming. For the first time in her life, Laura felt truly isolated, not just physically, but emotionally. Yet deep down, she knew she couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything Ethan had done for her. She spent most of her time underground, moving between abandoned buildings, train stations, and forgotten corners of the city. The prototype decoder Ethan had given her became her lifeline, a tiny beacon of hope amid chaos. Laura studied it carefully, trying to understand how it worked. It wasn't easy. The technology was far beyond anything she'd ever encountered. Still, she refused to let frustration get the better of her. If this device held the key to unlocking the necklace's secrets, then mastering it was her only option. During her travels, Laura began piecing together allies. At first, they were strangers, people who noticed her desperation and offered help without asking too many questions. A homeless man named Carl gave her food and shelter in exchange for listening to his stories about life on the streets. An elderly librarian named Mrs. Harper let her use the back room of the library to research ancient symbols late into the night. Slowly but surely, Laura built a network of support, even if it was fragile and makeshift. One evening, while hiding out in an old warehouse, Laura met someone who would change everything. Mia, a brilliant hacker with a sharp tongue and a heart full of rebellion. Mia had been tracking corporate activities linked to artifact thefts and recognized Laura's description from intercepted communications. When she found Laura huddled over maps and notes, she didn't hesitate to introduce herself. "You're the girl with the glowing necklace, aren't you?" Mia asked, plopping down beside her. Her laptop hummed softly as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Laura tensed, instinctively covering the pendant with her hand. "Who are you?" "Relax," Mia said, holding up her hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I've been following these guys, the ones chasing you, for months. They're bad news, trust me." Laura hesitated. Trusting anyone new felt like walking a tightrope, especially after Ryan's betrayal. But something about Mia's confidence and her knowledge of the situation convinced Laura to take a chance. "What do you know about them?" Laura asked cautiously. Mia leaned closer, lowering her voice. "They call themselves Nexus Corp. Big players in the tech world, but their real business is darker. Think black market deals, illegal experiments, and enough money to buy entire governments. If they want your necklace, it's not just because it's shiny." Laura nodded grimly. None of this surprised her. After all, Ethan had warned her about the dangers lurking behind powerful corporations. Still, hearing it confirmed made her stomach churn. "So, what do we do?" Laura asked, glancing at the decoder in her lap. "We fight back," Mia replied, simply, "but not head-on. We hit them where it hurts, their data. Let me show you." Over the next few days, Mia taught Laura the basics of hacking and surveillance. Together, they uncovered hidden files detailing Nexus Corp's operations, secret labs, stolen artifacts, and plans for weaponizing alien technology. With each discovery, Laura grew more determined to stop them, not just for herself, but for everyone whose lives could be destroyed by their greed. As their investigation deepened, Laura realized they needed more than just information. They needed proof, something undeniable that could expose Nexus Corp's crimes to the world. That's when Mia suggested a risky plan, infiltrating one of their facilities to retrieve classified documents. "It's dangerous," Mia admitted, spreading blueprints across a table. "But if we pull it off, we can bring them down for good." Laura stared at the maps, her heart pounding. Breaking into a heavily guarded compound sounded impossible, yet she also knew it might be their only shot. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Let's do it." The night of the mission, Laura and Mia approached the facility under cover of darkness. Dressed in black, armed with gadgets provided by Mia, and guided by intel gathered from weeks of planning, they moved silently through the perimeter fence. Security cameras scanned the area, but Mia's expertise kept them one step ahead. Inside, the building buzzed with activity. Scientists in lab coats hurried past, carrying samples and equipment. Laura's stomach twisted as she caught glimpses of artifacts displayed like trophies, pieces of history reduced to tools for profit. Anger burned inside her, fueling her determination to succeed. Their target was a secure server room located deep within the complex. Using the decoder, Laura accessed encrypted files while Mia kept watch. As data streamed onto a portable hard drive, alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Someone had discovered the breach. "Move!" Mia shouted, grabbing Laura's arm. They sprinted through corridors, dodging guards and narrowly avoiding capture. Just as they reached the exit, a voice boomed over the intercom. "Lockdown initiated. All personnel report to containment zones." Trapped, Laura and Mia ducked into a storage closet, hearts racing. Outside, footsteps echoed closer. Thinking quickly, Mia deployed a smoke bomb, creating confusion in the hallway. Seizing the opportunity, they slipped out unnoticed and disappeared into the night. Back at a safe house, they reviewed the stolen files. What they found shocked them. Detailed instructions for activating the artifacts, including the necklace. According to the documents, the symbols etched into the pendant weren't just decorative. They were part of a universal language capable of controlling energy itself. "This changes everything," Laura whispered, staring at the glowing necklace. "If we can decode it completely, we can stop them," Mia nodded. "But decoding it won't be easy, and we'll need backup." Laura thought about Ethan, about the sacrifices he'd made to protect her. Then she thought about her grandmother's stories. The Guardians, the Valley of Echoes, the hidden doorway. Maybe finding those answers was the key to finishing what they'd started. "I know where to go next," Laura said firmly. "It's time to visit the valley." Mia raised an eyebrow. "The valley? Care to explain?" Laura smiled faintly. "It's a long story, but if my grandmother was right, it's where all of this began, and maybe where it ends too." With renewed purpose, Laura prepared for the journey ahead. She didn't know what awaited her in the valley, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't face it alone. Between Mia's skills and the growing network of allies, she finally felt like she had a fighting chance. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the city skyline, Laura packed her belongings and set out once again. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and unknown challenges. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Whatever lay in the valley, she was ready to uncover its secrets and use them to protect the world from those who sought to exploit its power. The journey to the Valley of Echoes was long and grueling. Laura, Mia and their small team traveled by car, train, and foot, navigating treacherous terrain and avoiding detection at every turn. Along the way, Laura shared more about her grandmother's stories, painting a vivid picture of the Guardians and their mission to protect humanity. The others listened intently, each member of the group bringing their own skills and determination to the cause. When they finally reached the valley, it felt like stepping into another world. Nestled between towering cliffs and surrounded by barren beauty, the landscape seemed untouched by time. Laura led them to the spot her grandmother had described, a rocky outcrop marked by strange carvings that matched the symbols on her necklace. As she approached, the pendant around her neck began to hum softly, its glow intensifying with every step. "This is it," Laura whispered, running her fingers over the carvings. "The hidden entrance." Mia pulled out her laptop, scanning the area for any signs of traps or surveillance. Meanwhile, the others worked together to clear debris and uncover the massive stone slab blocking the way. When the slab finally shifted, revealing a narrow passageway lit by an otherworldly golden light, everyone froze in silence. "Are you sure about this?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with unease. Laura nodded firmly. "We don't have a choice. If there's a chance to stop Nexus Corp, it's inside." With that, they ventured into the depths of the earth, their footsteps echoing off the walls. The air grew cooler as they descended, and the light from the entrance faded behind them. But ahead, the glow of the corridor illuminated strange markings etched into the walls, symbols identical to those on the necklace. Each step felt like moving closer to something monumental, something beyond human understanding. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast chamber filled with relics unlike anything they'd ever seen. Artifacts floated mid-air, suspended by some unseen force, while holographic projections displayed images of advanced technology, medicine, and energy systems. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, glowing brightly with the same crescent shape as Laura's necklace. "It's beautiful," one of the team members murmured, awestruck. But Laura's focus was entirely on the pedestal. She approached cautiously, placing the necklace onto its surface. Instantly, the chamber came alive. Lights pulsed rhythmically, and a deep, resonant voice echoed through the space, not in words but in feelings and images that flooded their minds. They saw glimpses of an ancient civilization, wise and peaceful, sharing their knowledge with early humans. They witnessed warnings of misuse, the destruction caused when power fell into the wrong hands. And finally, they understood the purpose of the artifacts, tools meant to guide humanity toward progress, not domination. "They trusted us," Laura said softly, tears streaming down her face. "They believed we could use this knowledge wisely." Mia placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we can't let them down." Together, they used the prototype decoder to download the information stored within the chamber. It wasn't just data. It was a blueprint for a better future. Sustainable energy sources, cures for diseases, technologies designed to heal rather than harm. Everything humanity needed to thrive was right there, waiting to be unlocked. But as they prepared to leave, an ominous rumble shook the ground. The Nexus Corp had tracked them to the valley. Armed mercenaries stormed the chamber, led by none other than Ryan, Ethan's former assistant. His expression was cold, devoid of the guilt he'd shown during his betrayal. "You should have stayed hidden," Ryan said, raising his weapon. "Now you've left us no choice." Laura stepped forward, holding up the decoder. "You don't understand what you're doing. This isn't about control. It's about hope." Ryan hesitated, glancing at the artifacts floating around them. For a moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. But then he hardened his resolve. "Hope won't save us. Power will." Before he could act, the chamber responded. The glowing symbols flared brighter, creating a barrier of light that forced the mercenaries back. The voice returned, louder this time, filling the space with a message clear even without words: "Protect the legacy." Seizing the opportunity, Laura and her team fled the chamber, sealing the entrance behind them. As they escaped into the night, the valley trembled, collapsing in on itself to safeguard its secrets once more. Back in the city, Laura released the decoded information to the world, not through corporations or governments, but through independent networks dedicated to transparency and ethical use. News outlets hailed the discovery as a turning point for humanity, crediting an anonymous source for providing the breakthrough. Though Ethan was gone, Laura knew he'd be proud of what they'd accomplished. She kept the necklace close, a reminder of her family's legacy and the responsibility she now carried. With Mia and the others by her side, she vowed to continue protecting the knowledge entrusted to her. As she stood on a hill overlooking the city, watching the sunrise paint the skyline gold, Laura felt a sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. For the first time in her life, she truly believed in the power of hope and in the strength of those who dared to fight for it.